The Galactic Empire had stood for millennia, a structure of order forged not from unity, but from dominance. Its banners spread across spiral arms, its fleets patrolled the dark, its rulers proclaimed themselves eternal. For countless species, survival meant submission, and peace meant obedience. To the Empire, the galaxy was a possession, not a community. It measured worth not by achievement, but by utility. And among the hierarchy of races, humanity held no seat of honor. Young, ambitious, unpredictable, humans were dismissed as brash newcomers. They were allowed to expand, to trade, to negotiate treaties, but never to be taken seriously. Their courage was admired in whispers, their stubbornness mocked in public, and their capacity for loyalty dismissed as sentimental weakness. The Empire saw them as a tool, fierce enough to use, harmless enough to ignore. The Empire's rulers, secure in their power, did not understand that humanity had learned to mask its teeth. Wars waged in the dark ages of Earth had already taught them patience, endurance, and vengeance. When humanity joined the galactic stage, its diplomats came dressed in humility, its merchants bowed in respect, its soldiers served quietly in auxiliary roles. But beneath the surface lay generals who had studied every war the Empire had fought, scientists who dissected every technology they encountered, and leaders who remembered every insult recorded in memory. Humanity played the role of the underestimated, and the Empire accepted it gladly. Empires, after all, collapse not when they are weak, but when they forget the danger of the underestimated. Into this environment came 3 women, unknown beyond their communities, unnoticed by the Empire's chronicles. They were brides, newly married, carrying the hopes of a people still finding its place among the stars. Their names were spoken with love among humans, but the Empire never bothered to learn them. To the Empire, they were symbols, curiosities, representatives of humanity's strange rituals of union and family. The Empire had long dismissed such traditions regarding love and loyalty as inefficient distractions from duty and ambition. Where they saw weakness, humanity found strength, and where the Empire saw sentimental chains, humanity carried unbreakable bonds. The brides were not ambassadors. They were not warriors. They were not commanders. They were wives. And in that word rested meaning the Empire could not comprehend. The occasion was meant to be one of peace. On a neutral world, under the banners of truce, representatives from countless species gathered for the Festival of Union. It was a time of cultural exchange, a theater in which the Empire pretended tolerance while quietly reminding all participants of its supremacy. Rituals were displayed, food shared, songs sung, and gestures of goodwill enacted. Humanity, eager to prove itself a member of this galactic family, presented not weapons or wonders but traditions. And among the traditions was the honoring of union. 3 young women in ceremonial dress, representing the strength of bonds not forged by power or conquest, but by choice and devotion. They were there not as symbols of statecraft, but as symbols of what humanity cherished. The Empire should have ignored them. It should have dismissed them as irrelevant. But arrogance has never been content with indifference. It must always mock, humiliate, and destroy. The banquet of the Empire's nobles was a theater of cruelty disguised as courtesy. Their words were poison wrapped in compliments, their laughter a blade hidden behind smiles. They mocked the simplicity of human attire, the lack of grandeur in human rituals, the primitive notion that love could bind 2 lives more tightly than politics or profit. The brides bore the insults with dignity, their composure earning quiet respect from other species watching silently, unwilling to speak but not blind. The Empire's nobles mistook patience for weakness. They escalated, turning jokes into accusations, accusations into charges. A fabricated crime was declared. The brides had dishonored imperial dignity. The verdict was swift, the sentence brutal. Before the banquet ended, 3 human lives were ended in public, extinguished with the casual cruelty of rulers convinced of impunity. No trial, no defense, no hesitation. 3 women fell, their blood staining the floor of the Empire's hall, and their killers laughed. The room grew silent afterward, not from shock, such acts were common in imperial politics, but from the awareness that something irreversible had occurred. The nobles believed they had humiliated humanity, proven its fragility, taught its submission. They mistook silence for acquiescence, grief for weakness, stillness for defeat. They believed the matter would end as all such matters ended, with a protest filed. A diplomat recalled a compensation negotiated. They thought humanity would mourn quietly and then continue to serve. They did not understand that they had not killed brides. They had killed wives. And the men who had vowed their lives to those women were not merchants, not ambassadors, not nameless soldiers. They were generals, and they were ruthless. The report traveled faster than any courier, carried by those who had seen the crime, repeated in whispers across starships and stations, transmitted by trembling hands to human colonies. At first it was disbelief, then grief, then a silence darker than any scream. Humanity did not announce vengeance. It did not declare war. It did not threaten. It simply went quiet, as though the stars themselves had dimmed in respect. Empires learn to fear silence, for silence means preparation. A diplomat, one of the few survivors of the banquet, carried the truth back to humanity's core. His words, spoken without embellishment, cut deeper than any speech. They were not brides, he said. They were wives of generals. The empire has killed not symbols, but hearts, and the price will be empire itself. In that moment, the galaxy shifted. Those who understood humanity's nature trembled. Those who had underestimated them laughed nervously, hoping it was an exaggeration. But among humans there was no laughter, no argument, no hesitation. 3 lives had been taken. The balance of an empire would be demanded in return. To others it was unthinkable, disproportionate, impossible. To humans it was simple justice. And the wheels of vengeance began to turn. The empire's arrogance blinded it to the storm gathering. It had seen rebellions, crushed them with fleets. It had seen rivals, destroyed them with politics. It had seen assassins, deterred them with fear. But it had never seen humanity provoked at the deepest level. It had never seen what humans become when love is torn from them. The empire had studied human wars but misunderstood their cause. It saw only battles and strategies, never the fury that drove them. It saw weapons, but not the will behind them. It did not comprehend that humans fight hardest not for land, not for power, not even for survival, but for those they love. And when love is taken, survival is no longer enough. Only vengeance remains. The names of the generals were not spoken aloud in those days. They were whispered, half in reverence, half in fear. Each commanded fleets hidden from imperial eyes, arsenals unregistered, forces underestimated. Each had earned reputations not through ceremony, but through the aftermath of wars already fought and won in silence. The message spread like a quiet contagion, traveling faster than official channels, bypassing censors, carried in fragments of speech and encrypted bursts of data. Across human space, the same words ignited the same reaction. The Empire had killed the wives of 3 generals. No other detail was necessary. The galaxy expected human outrage, protests at embassies, boycotts of imperial trade. The Empire itself anticipated some petty rebellion to crush publicly, a reminder to humanity of its low station. What the galaxy did not expect was a silence that followed, a silence that was not resignation, but concentration. For humans, there was no debate over response, no hesitation in weighing cost against gain. The crime was unforgivable, and therefore the punishment would be absolute. The generals emerged not with speeches, but with orders. In their grief there was no visible trembling, no public mourning. Their faces, once softened by private lives, became masks of steel. Each man had commanded fleets in distant wars, had studied the strategies of alien empires, had prepared contingencies not for honor, but for survival. Now every contingency, every hidden plan, every weapon stored for a day of necessity was summoned across human space. Signals were dispatched in silence, awakening fleets that had never been acknowledged to the Empire. Entire sectors lit up with mobilization, not chaotic, but precise, not noisy, but surgical. Crews reported without being asked, colonies contributed without question, industries shifted overnight to war production. Humanity had always prepared, and now its preparation revealed itself. The Empire's arrogance was reinforced by its ignorance. It laughed at the idea of human vengeance, calling them a race of traitors and dreamers, too sentimental to wage a war of annihilation. Its governors dismissed intelligence reports of human fleets as exaggerations. Its admirals ignored warnings of unusual activity along borders. To the Empire, humanity was dangerous only in small numbers, unpredictable in skirmishes, useful as auxiliaries but incapable of empire-scale war. They measured humanity by what it had shown, not by what it had hidden. And what it had hidden was vast. The generals did not call for allies, nor did they announce their intent. They understood that vengeance loses its purity when diluted by politics. Their war would not be fought in chambers of diplomacy, but in the cold silence of space. One general began with supply lines, sending fleets into the void where imperial convoys traveled. Ships disappeared, crews vanished, resources were cut off. Another general struck at communications, seizing relay stations, silencing channels, blinding the Empire's coordination. The third targeted leadership, dispatching assassins in the night, orchestrating ambushes that ended the lives of governors and admirals before they could respond. It was not one war, but 3 overlapping wars, coordinated with such precision that the Empire could not recognize its enemy until the damage was irreversible. The first weeks were dismissed as coincidence, the second as rebellion, the third as conspiracy. Only when imperial sectors began to collapse in unison did the truth dawn. Humanity was not rebelling. It was dismantling. Empires are accustomed to brute force, to grand fleets clashing in ceremonial battles. The humans did not offer such satisfaction. They attacked without warning, withdrew without trace, struck where least expected. Entire armadas vanished in ambushes orchestrated with merciless efficiency. Colonies that resisted were burned, while those who surrendered were spared. The humans did not wage indiscriminate slaughter. They waged calculated terror. The message was clear. This was not war for conquest. This was retribution. The Empire attempted mockery even as it bled. Its propaganda called the humans savages, declared their fleets insignificant, their efforts doomed. It promised quick victory, mocked the notion that love could drive war. But mockery cannot hide fear. In private councils, panic grew. Admirals confessed their fleets were outmaneuvered. Governors begged for reinforcements that never arrived. Supply chains once thought invulnerable collapsed overnight. The Empire, for all its size, was clumsy, slow, and blind. Humanity, for all its youth, was fast, precise, and ruthless. The galaxy watched in silence, too afraid to intervene, too fascinated to look away. As fleets burned, rumors spread like wildfire. Soldiers spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere, unleashed weapons unseen before, then vanished into hyperspace without leaving traces. Captains whispered of dreadnoughts painted black, carrying no insignia, moving with impossible coordination. Merchants told stories of entire sectors where imperial law no longer reached, where only silence answered hails. The name of humanity became a curse among imperials, a warning among neutrals, and a prayer among the oppressed. Each world that fell carried the same whispered refrain: never harm what humans love. The Empire struck back with fury, dispatching entire legions to crush human fleets. But fury cannot substitute for preparation. Imperial ships were built for intimidation, bristling with weapons but lacking subtlety. Human ships were built for killing, stripped of ornament, armed with weapons designed not for show but for certainty. In battle after battle, Imperial forces found themselves slaughtered before they could adapt. Entire flotillas fell without scoring a hit. Their admirals outmaneuvered before they understood the trap. Humanity had studied every imperial tactic, cataloged every maneuver, prepared counters for every scenario. The Empire had never studied humanity, and so it bled. For the generals, grief remained the silent engine of their vengeance. They did not rage. They did not boast. They did not glory in destruction. Their orders were spoken with cold precision. Their victories marked not with celebration, but with silence. Every world burned was a funeral pyre. Every fleet destroyed a monument. They carried the memory of their wives not as comfort, but as commandment. There would be no mercy, no compromise, no peace. Where other wars ended in negotiation, this war had only one possible conclusion. The galaxy began to shift its balance. Neutral powers that once feared the Empire now waited quietly, sensing its weakness. Rivals that once cowered now considered alliances with humanity. But the generals refused all offers. This was not a war for expansion. It was not for territory, not for wealth, not for prestige. It was war for vengeance, and vengeance does not share. To others it seemed madness. To humans it was justice. Empires calculate cost and benefit. Humanity calculated debt and payment. 3 lives have been taken, and the debt was empire itself. World after world fell. Some surrendered before the fleets arrived, desperate to avoid annihilation. Some resisted and were reduced to ash. The humans spared civilians when possible, not from mercy, but from precision. Their war was against rulers, not populations. Yet even mercy carried terror, for it revealed control. Where the empire killed to remind others of its power, humanity spared to remind others of its choice. And choice is more frightening than cruelty, for it shows the killer holds not only your life but your fate. The empire's foundations cracked not with a single blow, but with 1,000 precise strikes. Each sector lost was a fracture. Each world surrendered a wound. Each defeated fleet a severed artery. At first, the empire told itself the damage was temporary, a disruption that could be repaired with enough force. But the human campaign was not disruption. It was dismemberment. Every strike was chosen with purpose. Every move calculated to deny recovery. The empire was vast, but its size became a liability. Where it needed time to shift resources, humans required none. Where it relied on intimidation, humans relied on inevitability. And inevitability moved faster than any fleet. The fall of the world began in the outer sectors, but soon the collapse reached the core. Human fleets penetrated defenses once thought unbreakable. They did not destroy indiscriminately. They targeted command centers, shipyards, leadership palaces. Civilian populations were left intact where possible, but the empire's rulers were exterminated with cold efficiency. Governors were dragged from palaces and executed without speeches. Admirals found their ships breached and command bridges flooded with silence. Council members vanished between meetings. The message was not conquest, but annihilation. The empire would not survive, not in fragments, not in remnants. Its very memory would be scarred. In desperation, the Imperial High Council convened. Once arrogant, now desperate, they argued not over victory but survival. Some demanded negotiations. Others urged surrender. Still others clung to fantasies of counterattack. None of their voices mattered. For while they debated, human fleets drew closer to the capital. The generals had spared no time for rhetoric. They did not intend to speak to the empire. They intended to end it. The confrontation came not in a grand battle spectacle, but in the systematic dismantling of defenses. The capital system was fortified beyond imagining, surrounded by fleets, shielded by planetary guns, defended by layers of technology meant to withstand any enemy. But preparation cannot withstand inevitability. The humans did not charge headlong. They cut apart defenses piece by piece, isolating fleets, severing communication, neutralizing weapons. Every defense that fired was silenced. Every ship that resisted was destroyed. Every world that begged for mercy was ignored. The empire had offered no mercy, and none would be returned. The generals themselves never appeared in person. They commanded from silence, their voices delivered only to their fleets. The empire never saw their faces, never heard their grief, never touched their humanity. They became more than men. They became judgment. In that judgment, there was no plea, no appeal, no compromise. The empire had taken their wives. Humanity would take their empire. And so the capital, heart of millennia of rule, began to burn. The High Council at last begged for negotiations, sending envoys with promises of apology, reparations, peace. But there was no reply. The generals did not acknowledge words. They acknowledged only actions, and the only action possible was destruction. The empire begged for forgiveness, but forgiveness had died with 3 women. The empire begged for peace, but peace had died at the banquet. The empire begged for survival, but survival had been denied the moment arrogance struck at love. The final blow was not a cataclysm, but a silence. As the last imperial fleet fell, as the capital's defenses failed, as the council chambers collapsed in fire, the humans did not cheer. They did not broadcast victory, did not proclaim dominance. They simply ended it. The Empire's banners burned, its rulers died, its name was erased. And in the quiet after destruction, the galaxy felt the weight of something greater than conquest. It felt the weight of law. That law was not written in treaties, nor spoken in decrees. It was written in ash and fire, in the ruins of worlds, in the silence of fleets. It was simple, terrible, undeniable. Never harm what humans love. For if you do, there is no empire, no fleet, no power that will save you. Humanity may endure insult, may survive defeat, may forgive betrayal, but it will never forgive the murder of its heart. Love is the engine of its fury, and fury is the shape of its vengeance. The aftermath was not conquest, but absence. Humanity did not claim the Empire's throne, did not plant its banners on conquered worlds. It withdrew, leaving ruins where palaces had stood, silence where fleets had patrolled. The galaxy expected expansion, but expansion was not the goal. Vengeance was the only purpose, and once vengeance was complete, the generals returned to silence. The Empire was gone, but the generals gained no joy. Their wives were still gone, their grief still unhealed. Victory was ash, but it was ash they had chosen. Other species struggled to understand. Why destroy an empire only to walk away? Why dismantle power and refuse to wield it? They failed to see the truth. Humanity did not wage war for gain. It waged war for justice. And justice once delivered requires no crown. To conquer would be to dishonor the dead, to turn grief into ambition. The generals refused such corruption. They had avenged, and that was enough. The galaxy trembled with new awareness. No species mocked humanity now. No empire dismissed its traditions. No noble sneered at its customs. Marriages once derided as primitive were now recognized as sacred. Love once mocked as weakness was now feared as strength. And across the stars, whispers spread. The story of 3 brides murdered in arrogance. The story of 3 generals answering with annihilation. The story of an empire that laughed until it died. The story of humanity, teaching its law in blood. Children of other species grew up hearing the warning as legend. Do not harm what humans love, for they will burn galaxies to avenge it. Traders repeated it at markets. Soldiers whispered in barracks. Rulers remembered it in councils. It became not a tale but a commandment, carried in the silence of every human gaze. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not won by conquest or diplomacy, but by vengeance. And vengeance proved stronger than empires. The empire's ruins became a graveyard, not rebuilt, not claimed, left as a warning. Ships drifted silent. Cities crumbled, banners rotted. No one dared to settle the ruins, for to do so felt like trespassing on a tomb. And it was a tomb, not only of a fallen empire, but of arrogance itself. Every ruin whispered the same truth. This is what happens when you harm what humans love. The generals disappeared into obscurity. Some said they retired to remote colonies. Others claimed they vanished into the void, leading fleets in silence forever. None knew for certain, and none dared to ask. Their names were not carved into monuments, their victories not celebrated with parades. Humanity did not glorify them, for they themselves refused glory. Their wives had been their world, and without them, there was nothing to glorify. They had delivered vengeance, and in that vengeance found no peace.